Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Welcome to the OT is In podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with the expert on Waldorf education and form drawing, Robyn Beaufoym. We discuss form drawing as an option to build skills such as spatial awareness, fine motor skills, and overall coordination, which cumulatively benefit handwriting and overall learning. Robyn shares insights into the Waldorf philosophy, explaining how it's centered around individualized education and the use of a child as a guide for learning. She goes into describe form drawing as the drawing of repetitive symbols, shapes, and patterns, highlighting its evolution from the early grades through to the middle school and its connection even to geometry. We delve into the practical aspects of form drawing, discussing the process, introducing forms to children through multisensory experiences. You know I love that as an OT. And involving movement, tactile activities, and visualization. And yes, we talk about overcoming resistance, especially when starting this activity with older children, but also its practical application for adults and relaxation and mindfulness. I'm so honored that you're here listening. So let's get on with the show. Before we continue, I want to take a second to invite you to the Handwriting Focus Group. In episodes 5 through 8 of the OT is In podcast, we're discussing handwriting, but you'll notice it is only one aspect of handwriting: vision. The month-long focus group is a deep dive into the complex task of handwriting, led by me, Sarah Collins, a seasoned homeschool mom and occupational therapist who understands your challenges firsthand. Join us as we tackle the tough questions. What are all the skills needed to write a simple sentence? How and why do the required skills get more complex as expectations grow? What is dysgraphia and how do you address it? When is it time to embrace technology over traditional handwriting methods? And most importantly, do we really need to write in the digital age? So you'll see there are so many more questions that we can target through that group than here on this one podcast. Restore hope and confidence in your homeschooling journey. Sign up now and let's revolutionize your approach to handwriting together. You can find the group in the shop at homeschoolot.com or specifically homeschoolot.com/shop/handwriting focus group. Now, back to the show. Right, welcome back. I am so excited to have Robyn Beaufoym here with me today, who is the expert on all things Waldorf and form drawing. She's going to share with us a little bit more about, vision and how form drawing can affect these skills and how it all plays into handwriting and all things Waldorf and homeschooling.
Thanks for having me. Well done on my last name.
Thank you. Thank you. Practice. Good stuff. Can you start off by just telling us a little bit about the Waldorf philosophy as a whole and then how form drawing fits into it?
Sure. So Waldorf education has been around for just over 100 years now. It's based on the work of a man called Rudolf Steiner. And I think the simplest way to describe Waldorf education is that it is designed to like there's no set curriculum, there's no
Mhm.
specific Waldorf curriculum. It's really designed for the teacher or the caregiver or whoever is whoever is working with the child to use the child in front of them as the guide for what needs to be brought and what needs to be taught,
You're speaking
which
to
I
my
think
like
makes
OT
homeschoolers like the
individualized. Yes.
perfect community.
Yes. Speaking to my heart there.
So form drawing is, for lack of a better word, I guess it's like a subject within the Waldorf methodology. It, what's the simplest way to describe it, I guess, would be that it is the drawing of repetitive symbols, shapes, and patterns. It starts on the first day of first grade with the simplest and sweetest of forms, and it grows in complexity through to the end of fourth grade. The forms sort of evolve as the children evolve, and there's different forms. They could kind of move in sequence based on child development and different things that the children will be needing. And then it doesn't disappear at the end of fourth grade. It transforms or evolves, and it becomes the geometry curriculum starting in fifth grade through middle school, which I think is
Yeah.
very cool.
I love that it combines and forms into math. It's
Yes.
beautiful how you can see shapes and how you can see just process.
Yeah. So the creator of form drawing courses he feels like it's a shame that it was named form drawing versus drawing forms,
Forms.
because by calling it form drawing, we're actually implying that the emphasis should be on the end product, like the form that's
Mm.
drawn on the paper. But in reality, the emphasis needs to be on the practice and the movement and all the different things that we do with the children and the form prior to ever having them put it down on paper.
I love that. So can you explain a little bit more of what that process looks like?
Sure. So let's say, hypothetical classroom, you might work on one form per week. And so the first few days of the week, you'd spend some time introducing the form to the children, but not on paper, just having them, move it with their arms or stand up and, move it in different ways with their bodies. You would also encourage things like taking them outside, drawing it in a large format with chalk, out in the parking lot or wherever in the driveway, and having the children walk the form with their bodies, skip the form, that kind of thing. What else comes to mind? Finger paints, shaving cream, drawing it in the sand, drawing it in the mud, lots of tactile things, working with like modeling clay. Another fun one is to take a clean paintbrush, dip it in water, and then on a chalkboard or a window and, draw the form that way as well. That was a lot of examples, but you want to
But
do that kind of work with the
yes.
children for several days.
Yeah, fantastic examples. And this really goes into this multisensory learning. When as an OT, when I think about multisensory, I'm thinking about, are we visually seeing it? Are we hearing the sounds? Like even with your body moving in one position, like how do your arms swish? Can you hear that? Vestibular, your balance as you're doing these things. But because if we are using all of these senses, one, it's more likely that it's getting into our memories, right? But then also more that we can take it from something big and huge, like you're riding your bike or you're walking down that line or that form or whatever, and then putting it smaller into paper. So it's
Right.
just a beautiful, I get so excited because it's so it just speaks so well into using our whole bodies to transform into something like writing or drawing.
Right. And really the very last thing you would do with that form is kind of bring that movement to rest out
Mhm.
of the body and onto the
Onto the
paper.
paper.
So the
Mhm.
final form on paper is not the goal. It's not really the focus. It's all the work that comes before that and integrating it into the children's bodies.
That's so great. So, if I can, I'd like to give just one example of the way that we used it and within
Yes.
our homeschool and starting. So, my son, and if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that we really struggled. His sense of vision was not making enough sense in his brain. He was not able to use his eyes to form. He couldn't trust them, basically. And so when we started using form drawing, it really brought to life, okay, we would start with even with a line, and I would start with, where do you see that? I see the line on a tree bark. I see the line on a window pane. I see the line, I don't know, wherever, on the line at the edge of the desk.
Out in the world.
Yes, everything. So we really started trying to have him tune into his vision for that, beginning part, and then add more in from his body. So I think we can transcend or switch or whatever based on the senses that you're trying to, focus and hone in on too with our kids. Because from there we went to, all right, show me it with your body, or how big, of the line, or you said you saw this line in a tree branch. How big was that line in the tree branch? So we're using all of these together, then we're compiling both of those senses together. Our next day then became kind of what you were talking about the movement and what he's a builder. So we would build with rocks, like draw the line with, or form it with the rocks, or like you mentioned, the Play-Doh, or
right.
any of that. And then kind of came along finally. And I love the way that you say, let it rest on the paper, because it's like you're taking all of this work in that you've done and now just let it be, let it rest there.
Right.
So
something you said, so sometimes the forms that we introduce, because we sort of move sequentially through this whole set of many forms, sometimes the children won't have real life experience with that form. Like it won't be something that they necessarily have seen out in the world. And so one thing that we often do when teaching form drawing is not needing to tell a full-blown story to go along with each form, but more just giving them little mental pictures, like little visualizations of what that form might look like out in the world for them to hold in their minds and in their bodies as well.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot because I think that's awesome. But like, can you give me an example or kind of something that you
Sure. So one of the forms, I actually drew just some really simple forms, but I'm not sure how helpful that is if you're just listening. I guess maybe you could.
There's YouTube and there is a podcast, but I also can link, or if you send me some, the pictures of it, I can put
Images,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I can put it
Okay.
up. It'll be on the blog post too.
Okay. So can you see those two?
I can, yes.
Just a really simple example. It's basically the same form, but it depending on where you are, what experiences your child has had out in the world, this may not be something that they've run into. So you can give them, a simple, short little story about a boat on some waves, maybe that, sort of move across this way. Or you might share a little short story about a monkey in the forest who is swinging from vine to vine, that one in green.
Yes.
That sort of thing. That just helps them have some context for it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So then from there, like if you're giving that story, then would they more act like the person in the boat or the monkey swinging from vine to vine? Or how would you move from that, visual piece in that story into the next section, into the motor section?
So I was thinking, and I've seen this done with younger grades, you can take the kids outside and they can literally like practice as if they were monkeys swinging from vine to vine, or maybe you have access to some sort of playground equipment that allows them to do that, like the rings that you can swing from, that kind of thing.
That's so excellent. And so then from there, so now they're using it with their bodies, and then we're going to move in to the next step of either building it or drawing it and letting it rest there. So in your experience, how have you seen this kind of progress from, younger kids to the older kids? How do you see that correspond into any other academics?
Well, I think the reason that form drawing is even part of the Waldorf methodology is because of the overall support that it offers to learning in general. So I'm not sure if we'll see where I go with this as to whether I get to your question. We can come back if I don't, or answering your question. But because form drawing so beautifully supports all learning, things like spatial awareness, fine motor skills, preparation for handwriting, spatial planning, orientation, things like that. All of those skills are really, really important for learning in general. So I think, will you tell me what your question was again? Sorry.
Well, you're kind of answering it. You are talking about these underlying skills that it's building, right? These foundational skills, which is different than, you're going to draw an A and I want you to take a big line down and a little line
Right.
down and then a little line across or whatever, using that same language to just form for a specific purpose, right? So when we're learning to write, we're writing for a specific purpose to express the
Right.
words that I'm saying correspond to the letters on the page. But here, what you're doing is different because you're building these skills, right? All the ones that
Right.
you talked about, the spatial relations, also the fine motor, your visual motor skills. I could go on and on. But so
Right.
how do you see it transform or move through to support academics in that way?
Well, I mean, I think in general it's supporting academics because it's supporting learning.
Mhm.
And then also we see the forms, especially as you move like into fourth grade, for example, they really start to tie in directly to different curriculum themes from the year. For example, in fourth grade, classes tend to be studying Nordic mythology, Celtic mythology, different mythology from different cultures. And so many of those cultures include these beautiful, intricate, sort of woven and braided forms and symbols. And so those forms directly show up in form drawing practice. And it's not, oh, now it's time for form drawing, everyone sit
Right.
down. It's more like, look at this beautiful art. They've got all these skills that they've been building first through third grade with their form drawing, and now they get to do, something very elaborate, but directly tied into the curriculum.
That's so cool. And it's going across, not just we write just for writing, but what you were
Right.
saying there is that we're moving through and uniting like all of these different subject matter, really, for lack of a better word. But oh, that's making all of these connections to come together. I think that's so, so cool. So tell me,
Yeah.
like, what are your favorite resources for form drawing?
Well, I'm biased, so
And I would hope so.
I mean, I have a few different resources that I really like. We have created a series of form drawing courses that cover the forms first through fourth grade. Each course includes about 30 different forms, which is basically enough for one per week for a school year, or 30 odd weeks. We brought in a master teacher, lots of years teaching and mentoring other teachers, and he created this beautiful course for us that really shows parents how to teach this, like what to
Mm,
do and how to present it to your children, which I think so often is the piece that's missing. Like, it's one thing to look at a form drawing book, but does it really tell you how to present it to the child, or why even that you're presenting it to the child? So my favorite resource would be the courses that we offer. And then there are some great other online resources. OSNA, the Association for Waldorf Schools in North America, and I can send you a link for that. They have a couple of really great articles that explain the why of form drawing, and they include some different references to different research studies that have been done. And then there are also some books that are available. Angela Lord is the author of a few. You had mentioned that you were familiar with her work as well. So a lot
mhm.
of families use those as well.
So there was kind of two things that stood out to me in that conversation. One of them, because I have worked with some families whose children's visual perceptual skills are one of those things that we're working to build. So visual perceptual skills, meaning that what you take, you see through your eyes, then your brain has to interpret them. And so the visual spatial, even the connection, so form constancy would be like, an A is an A is an A, no matter what the font, that type of thing.
Right.
Visual closure. So I'm just going to keep using an A, but, so the A is only partially drawn. Is that still an A? These are all visual perceptual skills that they're struggling with. Yet these kiddos are kind of older. And when I've shown them any type of form drawing, they're like, that's for babies. I don't want to do it. So
Yeah.
have you encountered that and what do you do?
Yes, we have definitely encountered that, and we have often considered renaming our form drawing courses, because currently they're labeled like grade 1, grade
Mhm.
2, grade 3, grade 4. And if you bring an older child in and they see that you've got them taking a grade 1 course, they're like
Yeah, no
immediately
way.
not
Not doing
not
it.
going to do it.
Hmm.
So we often think that they would have been better named like level 1,
Mm.
level 2, level 3, level 4. And we frequently will have adults come to us and ask, like, is this an appropriate series of courses
Hmm.
for me to take? I'm an adult. Should I start with the 4th grade course? And we always encourage them to start at the beginning, because it's not like these forms, the benefit of these forms is cumulative. So
Hmm.
you need the skills that are developed and built by doing the first few forms all the way through in order to really successfully accomplish the forms that come later.
I love it.
Not every older child buys that gracefully, but
Yeah.
that's
Well, I also think even if we've got this, the ASNA or, which I will link in the show notes, but when you said, there's research studies on it, sometimes the why and understanding
yes.
that the science and how it's moving forward sometimes can help to move in. So I'm really excited to be able to link that too.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was thinking when you were talking about this was you have mentioned a few times adults, and you showed me even a resource of meant for kind of a mindfulness or relaxation.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about form drawing in relationship to us and our stress?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I can say other than that the practice of drawing repetitive patterns and symbols is also very relaxing,
Mhm.
no matter how old you are. And so there are, Angela Lord actually has a book that's designed specifically for adults. I mean, older children could use it as well, but it is filled with beautiful forms to practice that help just sort of with focus and with calm. I love them.
Yeah, and you do them.
Yeah.
That's I think I might be after this as well. So, well, thank
Uh,
you so much for oh, you had more. Go ahead. I don't want to cut
I
you off.
just wanted to say that form drawing doesn't need to consume a huge amount of time each day. Like, it's more effective if you give it 10 to 15 minutes of practice 5 days a week or however many days you can
Mhm.
give to it versus, 1 hour once a week. It's far more effective. Like, the benefits are much more impactful if you just give it short, repetitive chunks of practice.
And doesn't that fit so much better into everyone's days? Anyway, it's a
Exactly.
teeny tiny
Exactly.
bit of time that we're going to do this and dedicate to
Yeah.
it, but not a giant chunk that I've got to find somewhere in my week.
Right.
That's yeah. Mm.
Right.
Ooh, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to let this rest. I'm on the paper at the end of the day, that or at the end of this lesson, and that's my one takeaway for sure. What is, if there's one thing
Awesome.
that you wanted to kind of leave everyone with about form drawing, what would it be?
I think it's easy to, if you just look at moments of form drawing, it's easy to think this isn't doing anything. Like, why are we doing this? And I think it's more important to trust the long-term benefits, like the cumulative benefits of this daily consistent habit that support just so beautifully support all learning, not just, one specific subject, but learning in general.
Fantastic. I love this. So, can you leave everyone with where can they find you and where can they find your resources and your classes specifically?
Sure. So our website is Waldorfish, waldorfish.com. And from there, you can see all the different curriculum that we offer. Form drawing is just one subject that we cover. We also have geometry, art, lots of art, physics, chemistry, botany. So that's our website. And then on Instagram, we are at Waldorfish. And on Facebook, we're at Waldorfish as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here and for kind of illustrating what this can look like within a homeschool, but also some of the underlying why and how, if we start something, how we can see the cumulative benefits. In OT speak, we say we're using an occupation as a means. So that's right now we enjoy drawing, and occupation as an end. So thinking, what is the point of all of this? How can we get to it? So that it all just plays right together. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.